What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so this is a video request I got from my subscribers. They wanted me to do a comparison video as to who would win a matchup. I guess a 7-game series. Who would win between the 1986 Boston Celtics and the 1996 Chicago Bulls. Now, of course, the Chicago Bulls used to own the record for most wins in an NBA season with 72. They held that record for 20 years, breaking the record, which was previously established by the 1972 Los Angeles Lakers that won 69 games. The Bulls held a record for 20 years until it was broken by the 2016 Warriors, who, ironically, didn't win the NBA championship that year. It was done by a team that won, I think, about 20 fewer games. The Cleveland Cavaliers of 2016. And then you have the 86 Celtics, who won 67 games, which is not the franchise record. The franchise record is by the 1973 Boston Celtics, who won 68-14. They lost in the conference finals to a Knicks team that won, I believe, 57 games. Now, one of the reasons, probably the main reasons why a team didn't win a title, is primarily due to injuries to key players, including John Havlicek. If it wasn't for that, then Hondo might have had 9 championship rings instead of just 8. Well, I say just 8. But, okay. Who wins in the matchup between these two teams? We don't know. Obviously, they haven't played each other. By the time the Bulls were doing their thing in 96, virtually all of the players on that team were retired by then. I think the notable exception was Robert Parrish, who was in the twilight years of his 21-year career. But I'll say this. I don't know who will win in a hypothetical matchup, but I tend to lean toward the 86 Celtics for a couple of factors. Number one, while the Bulls were a better defensive team, I think the Celtics were just more rounded, a better overall team, not as predictable offensively, and deeper. And the Bulls, although they, of course, had the advantage in the backcourt, the Bulls can't possibly compete with Boston's frontcourt. They just can't. All right. Now, of course, the Bulls boast the player that most of us consider either the greatest basketball player of all time, or in my opinion, one of the 2 greatest. Because you know how y'all. Excuse me. I know how I feel about Wilt, but Jordan is generally considered the greatest player of all time. But when you look at the starting 5 for both teams, Boston pretty much has the advantage in every position. Paris is better than Longley, who's probably the weakest link on the team. McHale is better than Rodman, even though Rodman is seen as a top 50 player. I think most of us would agree that Kevin McHale is better than Dennis Rodman. Bird is better than Pippen, though Pippen is a Hall of Famer too. Jordan has the advantage against Ainge, but at that point in time, Dennis Johnson, the 86 version of Dennis Johnson, was better than 96 Harper. Both teams had the 6-Man of the Year winner, Kukoc for the Bulls, Walton for the Celtics. Now, of course, Kukoc was a better ball handler, I guess. better ball handler at that point in time, a somewhat more dynamic scorer, obviously, than Walton. Walton had the advantage as far as, even though he was a shell of his former self, he still had the advantage when it came to defense. Boston had, I would say, the far better bench. The Bulls' greatness was pretty much limited to their starting lineup and Kukoc. Outside of that, their bench wasn't all that great. I mean, they had guys that, played hard and stepped up. But the 86 Celtics had a lot more depth on their bench. The Bulls had the advantage in the backcourt. Their backcourt was Jordan and Jordan and Harper, whereas Boston's was Danny Ainge and Dennis Johnson. Dennis Johnson, being Boston's best perimeter defender, obviously in this scenario would be guarding Michael Jordan. Now, I think we'll all agree that even though Michael Jordan was still the best player in the NBA by 96, he wasn't quite the same Michael Jordan before the retirement. He wasn't quite the same player. You're not going to stop Michael Jordan, though. But he could, Dennis Johnson could do, a Defensive Player of the Year award winner. I think he won that award twice? No, once, I think. But Dennis Johnson, being a Defensive Player of the Year award winner, Player of the Year winner, he wouldn't stop Michael Jordan, but I think he might have to make Mike work harder for his points. And Jordan might still average 30, maybe more around 28, 29 for the series. But it's bringing Jordan's efficiency down. Now, of course, this was 96, 97, 98 period. So field goal percentages are a little bit lower. Let's just say in that era, a guard shooting 45% is pretty good. So if DJ could keep Mike to say under, let's go with 46%. He can keep Mike under 46%, then he's done his job. Harper is not really going to score much. So, Ainge probably could guard him. And in that scenario, Ainge was the better shooter. Harper was the better defender. But, Ainge was scrappy. Let's just give that an edge to Ainge at that point, right? Bird versus Pippen. Pippen is arguably the greatest defensive player, small forward at least, the greatest defensive small forward of all time. But Larry Bird in his prime, let's not forget, there were many, 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 many times when Larry Bird used to destroy Scottie Pippen one-on-one. Now, Pippen, in the peak of his powers, he's going to slow down Larry Bird. But let's not forget that Larry Bird was 6'9.5". Okay. And Bird didn't just have to score the basketball. There were many series that Boston won with Larry Bird only averaging around 18, 19 points. Bird could score. He could get you 28 to 30 points a game. But Bird could facilitate too. He could be almost a white Magic Johnson and win that series. And that's why I say their offense is a little bit more unpredictable than Chicago's. Whereas Chicago's offense, although, with the triangle offense, there's the movement and they were a more team-oriented team, they still sort of relied on Michael Jordan. And if Michael wasn't hitting, then hopefully Tony Kukoc and Scottie Pippen can step up. But I still give the advantage to Larry Bird in that scenario. Power forward Kevin McHale versus Dennis Rodman. Dennis is one of the great defenders of all time. But let's not forget, man, Kevin McHale was 6'10", lanky, and was an absolute beast before the foot injury, in 87. He was absolute beast in the post. That was prime Kevin McHale in 86. He destroys Dennis Rodman down low. Destroys him. He's not Sean Kemp. And he's not Alonzo Mourning. This is a guy that was very offensively complex and diverse with a versatility. He's one of the two greatest post scorers in the history of the game, the other being Akeem Olajuwon. But down low, Kevin McHale might just be the greatest low post scorer the game has ever seen. He's going to destroy Dennis Rodman. Not to mention the fact that Kevin McHale was a very good defender. And at the center position, you got Robert Parrish versus Longley. That's no contest. Robert Parrish is going to destroy Luke Longley. Matter of fact, they'll let Luke Longley score. If it comes down to the Bulls having to rely on Luke Longley to score, the Bulls are in trouble. All right, so Luke can average 10 and 5. You can give him that. Matter of fact, give him 10, 12 and 6. Let him average 12 and 6. If Parrish is averaging 20 and 10, the Bulls ain't got no shot. If McHale is averaging 26 and 9, the Bulls have no shot. You know what I'm saying? So in a nutshell, then of course they have the bench. You got Seasting, you got Carlisle, you got Walton, Sam Vincent. I mean, some other guys, I just can't think of the names off the top of my head. But Boston's Death, Greg Kite. At the end of the day, Boston just has too much depth, too many weapons, offensive unpredictability, better team chemistry, especially on offense. I tend to think that Boston wins in 6. I mean, then, let's be honest, Chicago sort of played in an era that a lot of us would recognize as being, I'm talking about the second three-peat. Let's be honest. Let's be honest now. And I'm honest with this. They're a great team, but you can argue in the late 90s, the NBA did become a little bit watered down compared to the 80s. And that's no knock on the Bulls. But it was a little bit watered down after 1995 through 2000. You know what I'm saying? Whereas Boston played against some of the best competition in the history of the NBA. I mean, the Bulls were playing against the Sonics, right? Great team. Whereas the Boston Celtics were playing against a team with Akeem Olajuwon and Ralph Sampson at the peak of their power, especially Ralph Sampson and Akeem Olajuwon. By the way, a lot of us feel like the Bulls never played this team with an actual center in the NBA Finals that could really give them some problems. Parrish would do that. Parrish would easily be the best center the Bulls played against in the Finals. I mean, think about it. You could argue the best center they played against was Duckworth? Kevin Duckworth, maybe? In 98, in 97 was Greg Ostertag. In 96 it was Irvin Johnson, not Magic, but the other Irvin Johnson. In 93 it was Oliver Miller, who never turned down a mom's apple pie. Hole. And in 91, their center was what? Divac? Yeah. So that'll be a big factor. But yeah, I'm going with the Boston Celtics winning this series in 6 games. But tell me what you guys think.